So it's quite welcoming to have one of the youngest accelerators in the industry that only launched about a month ago, 2 months ago, I think. But also one of the largest and most well-known startups at the moment. Are you no longer a startup, really? You're still a startup, okay. But certainly made a number of headlines. A company that was once a startup and has shook the business where it actually started to make a mark, and that included my old business. And we've got an Israeli accelerator company that is making waves already with what it's doing, and another young startup that is certainly making an opportunity out of what it sees in the future. And what I'm going to do after we've had that panel is I'm going to ask Michael Jones to come up and do a summary, because this morning we had a think tank. A think tank, basically, we got about 15, 16, 17 organizations of all different types. But one thing they had in common was the need to identify collaboration and the need to communicate with other companies or organizations similar to themselves or even not similar to themselves. So that could have been an accelerator. It might have been a cluster organization. It might be more state-funded. It might be more privately funded. So we'll hear a little bit from Michael Jones in a minute. But Angelica, I'd like you to come up onto the stage and just explain a little bit about Optima X. And if you need a remote control.
I will. I'll just sit here.
Yeah.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. Okay. So I just have 3 minutes. Oh, okay. Okay, so as Craig said, we're going to discuss today about collaboration. At the description of the Blue Talk, there was some phrase discussing about supportive networks as accelerators. We're trying to build a supportive network in Athens, in Greece. Our talk today will highlight how important is collaboration in maritime tech and how it can fuel change and lead to innovation when it is surrounded by collaborative networks. So I would like to share 2 stories with you that have to do with trust building. The first one is an unsuccessful example of building trust, and the second one is a successful one. I think we would all agree that it's difficult to penetrate in the shipping market when you're a newcomer, be it a person or a new product. People will not support you as easy until you prove how useful, in any sense, it's what you offer. So back in 2011, I was part of the Baltex team. That was a subsidiary company of the Baltic Exchange, regulated by the FSA in the UK, and provided an electronic platform to trade FFAs. The aim of the platform was to centralize FFA trading in a transparent way. The platform launched in 2011 with a very sophisticated technology built by the CME group in Chicago. And the clearing houses were clearing trades as fast as SAP. Some of the major trading houses like Cargill and BHP were supporting the platform. However, owners and FFA brokers didn't. The first 3 years from initiation, Baltex lost $4 million. The investment was huge, but the liquidity in the platform was missing. Baltex and the Baltic Exchange really tried to push the platform, giving many incentives to the brokers to use it, but they failed. So the platform ceased operations in 2017. Comments from the industry included the Baltex failed Baltex was the wrong solution for the market at the wrong time, and that has now been corrected. So Baltex failed to build trust, and trust is a principle of innovation and collaboration we so commonly accept as true, but we fail to focus on enough. And then we turn to describe the shipping market as being irreplaceable, which is, intransparent, complex, inefficient, paper-based, and very fragmented. And so we will jump now to the second story, which comes out of our affiliated company, Optima Shipping Services. So Optima Shipping Services is a worldwide shipbroker. So back in 2008, at the boom days, a ship owner wanted to buy a ship. That ship at that time, it was 31 years old, and it costed $11 million and a half dollars. A broker of the company told to his client, please don't buy it, because he explained the situation and why he should not invest in such a ship at that time, because also the owner wanted to take a loan. But he didn't listen, and he went to another broker, and he bought the ship. The thing was that at the time of delivery, the ship was at $1.5 million. So he didn't show trust to the broker, and he collaborated with another one. After some time, he came back and he said, you know something, you were right. And he actually increased collaboration with Optima Shipping Services and with the broker because he appreciated the trust and what he offered, our broker. So it's true that the word collaboration in itself includes words such as people, benefits, teamwork, success, players, sources, synergies, and so many others. And game-changing innovation is best attained through collaboration, and maritime tech is no different. Support networks for maritime and ocean startup companies, such as accelerators and incubators, may act as the trust vehicles between industry traditional companies and new ventures. I believe they have the tools to make the different parties collaborate and feel supported. But what they should focus on is collaboration in essence and in form. Essence is values to values and heart to heart, so that's common share of mentality and values. Form is how you're actually going to achieve what you want to do, how you're going to do it. And they should be careful enough not to neglect essence, as it has to come first, as it paves the way for unlikely partnerships and leads to more engagement and fulfillment. Optima X and its EnsoExcel Accelerator, when in business planning, designed a co-creation and co-collaboration network board, which is actually at the heart of the strategy of the company, to create a maritime innovation hub in Greece and in Europe with interconnected partners in order to promote sustainability and innovation. We partnered with a startup company in the educational tech scene to design our mentorship-driven program. We're on the way to collaborate with academic institutions globally, and we are on the way to support new ideas and incubate them jointly with the academic institutions. And we then partnered with successful startup companies in the maritime scene to promote innovation and increase the network. We talk with government and governmental agencies to jointly support new ventures and ideas. So that's a cumulative job done with people and entities sharing the same common values and vision to facilitate innovation and build and support companies that caters to as many people as possible in the ocean and shipping industry. We try to fuel change with entrepreneurial co-creation and co-collaboration model that consists of connective collaboration and compounding collaboration. Connective collaboration refers to connecting with a broader community. So it requires a broad, loosely connected community that can maintain awareness of activity and give results. And compounding collaboration refers to connecting as a purpose is to ensure that whatever our endeavor we are leveraging to the greatest extent possible to the work that has been done already, even if it is only to show us what to avoid. To the extent that we can do this, we can constantly compound and extend our capabilities, productivity, and agility, and then transfer this to the community. So that's all I wanted to share with you today. And let's not forget that nobody has ever built a great thing alone. Thank you. There we are.
So what you're going to do is you've created one of the youngest accelerators and one of the oldest shipping clusters in the world. And we've got some very established ship owners in
Athens.
Greece, and in Athens in particular. So how do you go to them and say, look at us, we've seen these accelerators in Israel, in other parts of the world, in Rotterdam, and you're going to go to these Greek ship owners and they say, okay, are they warming to the ideas? Are they looking to these solutions?
I think some of them do. Some of them don't even understand of what's going on now. I think we need to educate some of them, and the others we need to collaborate.
You see them wanting, the ones that are forward-thinking here, not so much the ones that aren't, but the ones that are forward-thinking, are they turning around to you and say, about time too? Are they really, how are they going to be, how do you see the forward-thinking Greek ship owners helping you?
There were people, very big Greek ship owners and forward-thinking that said, yeah, that's something that was missing, because we are the first nation in deadweight capacity, but we miss other stuff that the shipping industry can offer. So they want to keep the cluster in and expand.
And I noticed there is this difference between Optima X and Enzo.
Where actually Optima X and EnsoXL is a hybrid company, so they work together. EnsoXL is the maritime accelerator, where it's a non-for-profit accelerator program, and Optima X is a company that supports investments.
So that'd be more the commercial side.
Yeah.
Within there. So when you're developing these programs and you're looking for startups, it's a question I asked the last panel. Where do you find your startups? How are you going to find your startups? And what kind of startups are you looking to bring in?
Yeah, so we want to occupy with commercial shipping company, maritime tech companies. So we need startups that provide solutions for the commercial shipping industry. We do care about shipping operations, not that much about ports, crewing, artificial intelligence networks that can facilitate and make procedures easier. We invite international startups. We would like them to be to have some kind of gender equality, and also if they could bring some of their operations to Greece, that would be great. We do scouting from common platforms that all startup accelerators are using. And then with the word, we go there, travel there, and then try to...
So you're going to start your first accelerator program later this year?
In November.
In November.
Yeah, for 4 months.
For 4 months. So you're already looking. How many companies are you looking to bring in?
10.
10 companies to come in and to put through a 4-month accelerator program.
Exactly.
And then are there particular types of companies that you want to come to Greece?
We can discuss that, but we would like them to have them with us for 4 months.
Now, what I want to do now is to start bringing up the panel here, because I think what we're going to add to this discussion now is some of the history that has led to where we are today. So could I ask, it's Matt, Daniel, Nir, and Roberto, please, to come up onto the panel. And shortly, I'm going to ask Michael to join us. So if the 4 of you could come up here, please. Now, I haven't got time for clapping. Now, I'm going to start actually with Matt, because you're the company that's actually made a few headlines lately. So from Nautilus Labs, you've got a rather large investment, I think, was it from Microsoft?
Microsoft Ventures, yeah.
So let's start with a little bit about where you came from as Nautilus Labs and what kind of company you are, and who you're selling your services to, and why does Microsoft think you're so sexy?
For sure, and I hope they think we're sexy. So who we are as a company, it's good to start with the why we're doing what we're doing as a business, and that really comes down to reducing fuel consumption, reducing greenhouse gases in the industry. We think that there's an incredible opportunity to optimize fuel spend. Roughly 30% of it is wasted. A lot of that comes from noon-based reporting and analysis, and so what we're doing as a business is building a software platform that leverages machine learning, artificial intelligence, to help the folks who own and operate ships to reduce their fuel consumption and make more profitable voyages for better commercial outcomes. That's who we are as a business and why we're doing it. How we go to market doing that, what Microsoft invested in, is a team of 28 people today in New York, growing rapidly. Most of us come from a technology background, so I worked at IBM, our CTO worked at Google, our engineering team comes from Amazon and Palantir and eBay and companies like this. And we're really applying the best techniques from SaaS and from building a great analytics platform to the challenge in maritime of overconsumption of fuel. To date, our client base spans the globe, so we're working with companies in the US, Canada, the UK, the EU, and Denmark and Athens, as well as in Asia, in Singapore and Hong Kong. And we work across segments. So we've built a platform that is agnostic to ship type. So we work with dry bulk ships, liquid bulk, gas carrier, and liner. And I think really when it comes down to it, I think the word collaboration is one that we preach inside of our business to our clients, because what we see in the industry is not just this fractured nature, this fragmented nature to the market, into ship ownership and ship management. It's true inside companies where silos persist across the commercial teams, the operational teams, and the technical teams. And there's a lack of sharing of information insight, and it leads to a lot of inefficiency. So collaboration's a word we talk about a lot. Transparency is another word we talk about a lot. When you run your business on noon reports, you don't have real-time live insight into what's happening in your business the same way that you can with high-frequency data. So bringing real-time transparency to the teams and companies we work with is a big part of our value prop. The final word that I would talk about, and it's not on the chart, but I think it's one that might be valuable to think about in the context of the industry, is accountability. The reason why there's so much overconsumption, the reason why there's so much inefficiency, is because there's a lack of accountability of it across the market and inside companies. And so when you think about our platform and what we're building machine learning and artificial intelligence to deliver, it's those improved commercial outcomes by driving accountability into the business, so that every voyage and every ship, the management of them, is held accountable for the outcomes. And we think that at the end of the day will raise performance. We think the companies that lead the way and become the most efficient and optimize their business around data analytics will be the winners in the market. And at the end of the day, that will lead the entire market to a more efficient place, reducing fuel consumption, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and making shipping more sustainable.
But one of the things about you, though, is, or as a company, is I've come across, I can name 10 companies that are doing fuel reporting, noon reporting, taking data off of the ships. You know, I'm not going to start listing them, but you know that there are even some very well-established mainstream companies that are offering that service to ship owners already. So why did Microsoft come to you and say, and you just said it yourself, you don't come from the shipping background. You don't have that shipping, for want of a better word, pedigree, but you've come from a data-focused. So what are you doing with your AI that these companies are not? What are you doing that's made Microsoft go, hey, this is good?
It's a great question. I think the answer is a more human answer than artificial intelligence. And it's the focus on the client and the customer. What's differentiated us from day one, back before we had a product, back before we really had anything to show or results to show or ROI to validate from the platform, was the attention that we paid to our client base. If you walk around this hall and you talk to ship owners, you will find that a lot of them are dissatisfied with the service they receive in the market. They feel like some of their providers have them, for lack of a better term, overbailed. They can't negotiate. They have no power. Their products are forced down their neck. They don't get access to their data. They don't get access to the insights they want from their systems without paying massive charges. And so by coming in and being very client-focused, we've shown that we're different. We've shown that we're taking a different mentality to market to cultivate a client base and lead to client success. Similar to that, and from a collaboration standpoint, I think what's also true is we've built an open, interoperable platform. So our platform's entirely API-driven. We interoperate today with almost 100 different vendors of software, hardware, and sensors. And so we built a platform that's entirely agnostic to the technology that's on the ship, because we're a software provider. We want to be an excellent software provider, and that means collaborating with every other manufacturer and OEM that exists in the industry. So we're not trying to sell you a VMS. We're not trying to sell you a sensor. We're not trying to sell you an automation system. We just want to help you get better insights out of your data. And so by collaborating openly with the market, it's allowed us to really get in quickly with a lot of owners and on a lot of ships.
But slightly similar, but nonetheless different is marine traffic, because your model, when you started, you recognized the value in AIS. But what you managed to do was to commoditize it. But you're not very, but you're quite asset heavy, because you still have a requirement for a sensor in the port to pick up AIS signals, for example. But you've managed to turn around the whole AIS data aspect over the, I don't know how old marine traffic is now, maybe 10 years, 8 years?
11.
11 years old.
Yep.
So you've managed to do that, and there's the incumbent players that started by taking AIS data and were selling it as a premium. You've commoditized it.
We have, yeah, that's true. We've commoditized it in one respect, and we've made it open to everybody in another. And that's one of basically the huge strengths, and that's how we became so big so quickly. It was putting that information out into the public eye and making it available for anyone. There are premium products built on top of that, without a doubt. But yeah, the overall success, the fact that it grew from one man working in his study up to a global user base around 6 million customers, 6 million users, customers, which actually that is open to debate because it is a freemium product. Our users are technically our customers anyway. Even if they're not giving us any money, we consider them to be customers and we treat them in the same way. You've said so much that I want to echo, really. There's this thing about transparency and the fact that is driving efficiency, and that is something we are pushing. Bringing in other data sources, incorporating other data sources with AIS to give everybody access to a more valuable data set. Our main driver is improving operations and improving efficiency. And a lot of the information you can get through what we do and a lot of things we've built enable people to do that at no cost, because we see the benefit to the global maritime ecosystem as a whole.
But your benefit also that I see, and I do this every time I travel, I'm in a port,
Yep.
I take a photograph using your app
Yes.
and put it up. It's the ultimate ship spotting geek app. I know there's a commercial value in there, but I go out and I take photographs of ports of ships with the name of the ship sticking above it. And I think it's so cool. And I've done it so many times, and I still think it's so cool. I think that is one of the best sort of marketing things I have ever seen.
Thank you.
But you've got that far.
Yep.
Where are you going now? Because with something that's now become so commoditized, dare I say, you've got to find extra value.
Yeah, and that's where we move into collaborations, either with startups or with very, very established organizations. Our brand has huge power, huge draw. Our name is global, and a lot of people are coming to us to say, okay, we understand you've got this, or we understand you have access to this market. We have this product that we think will make sense, or we have this data that we think will make sense with your data, and together we can make something fantastic. And that's where we're going, really. We are both seeking out people where there's a collaboration that's obvious and beneficial to both parties or all parties involved. And also we have people coming into us, and we're growing in those two different directions. Again, something I would like to echo. What Matt said was you get inefficiencies as you grow, and we have grown very, very quickly, and we've now grown to this point that we need some real structure and some real organization. Before we were 20, 25, 30 people buzzing around, making things work really, really quickly, deploying things really, really quickly. But as you grow, you have to start building your structures to make sure everybody's aware, everything's documented, and you do start falling into this sort of silos, really. But when you start working with innovative startups, they kind of relight that fire, and you need to throw some resources at them and work with them, and they can use our name, our brand to access the market, and also our experience from failures and our experience from success, and we can work together like that. That's where we come from.
Roberto, you probably represent one of the youngest companies, probably the youngest on the board on this panel here. But as a company yourself, well, first of all, maybe we should explain a little bit about what Deep Sea Technologies is. And then I want your thoughts about what your sort of growth projections, how are you going to find success?
Okay, I should actually start with my background to see how this makes the company different to every other company, as you said, that is out there, because there are many companies now that claim performance monitoring and savings of fuel. So my background, I studied mechanical engineering in London at UCL, and then I did my master's in Oxford in computer science, and I specialized in machine learning. And as I'm half British, but I was born and raised in Greece. So I've actually spent all of my summers working in shipping companies, and all of my internships were actually in the performance department of shipping companies, which is very interesting because the problem of performance has been, the company is quite new, it's 2 years old, but for 7 years now I've been tackling with this problem of performance monitoring. So I met up with the co-founder of the company, which is Konstantinos Kyriakopoulos, which he's now finishing his PhD in Cambridge in machine learning in the UK. So together we bring mechanical engineering together with state-of-the-art machine learning to provide a holistic approach to vessel monitoring. So we don't just look at fuel consumption as one variable, but because it's a multivariable problem that's influenced by many parameters, we offer a very holistic approach to optimization. Because, for instance, let's say that we can have a vessel having an optimal route at 10 knots, let's say, but slowing it down that much might influence other parts of the ship. So there's no point in saving 5% more fuel, but having the engine break down, for instance, or having the hull damaged due to adverse weather conditions. So that's how we differentiate compared to every other company. We offer a holistic approach, and currently, although we're quite new, we have a very strong foothold in Greece. We have a few companies in Asia now at the moment, and a few in the UK. We have organic growth, and we brought in actually a shipping company, took equity in Deep Sea because we wanted actually to understand in much more depth the operations that are specific to the shipping industry and see how we can aim our product to solve their needs.
So you haven't really needed an accelerator to help you evolve then? You've managed to do it organically, have you?
Exactly. Now we're actually closing a funding round at the moment to accelerate even further, but we brought in first a shipping company to help us get kick-started.
Are you finding, I know your background, so I know why you're talking about the shipping companies, but I'm going back to what I asked Angelica about the Greek shipping companies. I mean, you're fairly deep into the Greek shipping market. Do you agree with what she said about there are some forward-thinking ship owners in Greece, but there are still a number that are going to get left behind if they don't wake up?
Yeah, I think there are some that are more forward-thinking than others, as Angelica said. But what's very interesting is that if you convince those key players of your value, and it's very difficult to do so because they have they scrutinize your product inside out, not only the UI and the interface, but every algorithm, your engineering knowledge in every domain. But after you convince them, then word of mouth and social proof works really well. So it's good because we've seen companies adopting our product and then recommending us to 3 new ones. So that's why we've managed to have a very good organic growth in Athens primarily, because ship owners know each other really well. Yep. So as soon as you establish yourself in one, you have 3 more clients without even trying.
So that word of mouth, that sort of, if you can get into the Greek market, then it's easier.
I think that's true for any market. Yeah, because everyone is interconnected, charters, ship owners.
I know it's not your job when you look at the startups, they're going to come into an accelerator program, and nor when you look at companies coming into an accelerator program to determine whether they necessarily have a unique, a USP or something. But if you get a lot of companies that are coming in as startups and saying, I've got the best, fuel saving monitoring solution time and time again, at some point you're just going to have to go, really? Another one? So a bit of advice then to Angelica here. How is she going to pick winning companies to take onto an accelerator program?
Okay. First of all, our secret sauce is the market validation. We collaborate. We're talking about collaboration. We are partners with Wärtsilä, Cargotec, Kirby from the US, PSA. Whenever we pick the best 25 companies out of more than 100 that we saw in the last few months, these are real numbers, we met 25 companies that making sense in investing in after considering the founder's background, the market potential, the technology, the competitive analysis, and then we consult with our global partners. And only when we hear from global partner, we want to test it if this is working, was our cue to invest. We take the undertaking to validate from technology point of view that the startup can deliver. However, the most significant factor that I can recommend for any investor is to get the market validation. And the market validation is also from consumers and also from the from co-workers and other members from the ecosystem. I just had a small talk with Angelica 2 hours ago about this, that if we will invest in a company from Greece, we will be like it will be co-invest together with OptimaX as someone with boots on the ground there, and vice versa. So I really see a great potential for more collaboration and competition between different accelerators and VCs around the world.
There seem to be a lot. I'm going to come down to this when Michael comes up onto the stage in a minute, because I see quite a lot of accelerators and clusters emerging now. But there was something you mentioned there that I noted. You mentioned sort of like partners with the Wärtsilä, with the technology companies. What you're talking about is more, and what you said is with the shipping companies. You're talking about other vendors, in a way, doing some sort of validation. You're talking about the end user, the ship operator, the ship owner being the validation for that. Are they contradicting each other slightly? Because the Wärtsiläs of the world are going to want to sell to the ship owners, the ship operators.
It's a good question with no clear answer. However, I will say that the best way is to get validation from this one and this one and this one as well. It's hard. It's rarely found. However, in our global partners, we make sure not to have only technology suppliers, but also DSV as a freight forwarder, Maersk as operator, PSA as port operator, technology manufacturer as Wärtsilä, Lloyd's Register as a classification company. You talk about silos, Matt. We believe that the future innovative idea in the sector will be the one that will break the silos. We call it the cross-pollination between subsectors in the industry. This happens in other industries. And we believe the same will happen in the maritime sector, when there will be a technology and digital platform that will share data and add value to the ship owners, ship operator, and technology manufacturers through collaboration between silos. Imagine a future of vessel as a service, or to sell engine hours instead of selling one time the capital equipment. You have to collaborate with the shipyard, with the ship operator, with the shipyards that do their innovation periodically. So it's one big ecosystem that will try to open the barriers.
I bet half of the Greek ship owners would be listening to him going,
No, I don't agree.
It's changed.
it's changed.
No, it's common sense. I mean, even as like Optima Shipping Services cooperates with yards, and it's a global industry with repair yards, new building yards. You need everything. It's the ecosystem big.
But when you're talking about the ecosystem, there's one part of that chain that you haven't mentioned that I believe marine traffic does tap into, and that is the shipper, the cargo owner. Because I know that there's a lot of companies, cargo owners, that do use marine traffic data because that tells them where the ships are carrying their cargo, effectively. So, you know, you've got that's one of the USPs that you've got within that aspect. I don't know whether your services go anywhere towards the shippers wanting to know the performance of vessels that they charter at all.
Our focus today is primarily on the folks who actually own the vessel.
The owners and operators.
Yeah.
So, and yours is primarily on the owner and operator.
No, we have charters as well.
Charterers.
Yeah.
So that's because that is when it comes to the conversations that I've had here during North Shipping about decarbonising shipping. a lot of that focus when it comes down to fuel and fuel efficiency or fuel change, the charterers and the cargo owners are actually the ones that have got to be more engaged in pushing change within the industry. So I'd be interested to hear how you see that then. If you've got a ship owner, a Greek ship owner that's taking equity in your business, but you've got cargo owners who see the value in that as well.
Yes. So just to be clear, we have as clients charters. They don't have equity in the company.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, and also it all depends in the equity structure if they can do something about it. And to be honest, they are very reluctant to bridge the gap between owner and charter. But the problem is not so much with the company that has equity in our company. The problem is with the client for which we share their data. And it started actually 6 months ago for the first time ever. To my knowledge, a charter had the credentials to have a holistic view of what's going on in the vessel. Same picture, real time, as the ship owner had as well. And although you would expect that this created many problems, they had much fewer claims for the vessels in which they shared the data than the vessels in which they didn't, because they trusted that the company did everything it could. It was in its best behavior and to do anything it could to improve performance. So if anything went wrong, both parties were alerted.
And that helped building the trust that you were talking about, the whole trust coming in. Okay, good. Michael, have you finished making your notes, Mr. Jones?
Yeah, of course.
Can I bring you up?
Sure.
Because we had this think tank this morning where we brought in a number of clusters from around the world, some accelerators from around the world, and we had government bodies and we had private sector associations. And you discussed the future of collaboration, I believe. So I've asked you to come here and talk a little bit about some of, if there were any, sort of agreements or conclusions that were made. And I've got no idea what he's going to say, because I was here all day.
Well, we solved it.
You solved it.
Yeah, we took care of it. So I think on the basics, there was agreement that collaboration is critical, that innovation is needed to solve lots of problems, and we need to make sure that the innovations are really solutions not in search of a problem, but really to address problems. And that change is coming quicker and quicker, which happens in many fields, but perhaps in shipping has been less fast than other fields, but certainly across the blue economy, the broader blue economy, oceanography, et cetera, not only the technology are changing, but this whole area of collaboration is, and there are a lot more clusters coming and a lot more incubators, a lot more accelerators that have developed in recent times. And that also then leads to the other kind of points that were raised. First was be inclusive. So, we talk about the triple helix, but the point was made that beyond the traditional education, industry, and policymakers, which need to be at the table, but we need to bring in voices that aren't perhaps as typical. And I think we all agree that there's a lot of creativity when you're in people that haven't already thought it through and aren't already think they have an answer because they've done it a certain way for 10 years or 20 years. So I thought that was quite interesting, this bringing in the new voices, breaking down silos. The second kind of big area we talked about was the culture. And one of the comments was made by several people was big companies have traditionally had a not invented here syndrome, and so you need to educate the big companies, same time you're educating others. And making sure that in big companies the idea of failure is not a problem. So failure is a way to learn and hopefully do it better the next time. I thought that was a very important point. As an obvious one is, again, development and conservation being balanced, so sustainable development. We had a long discussion about smart money, general consensus that we need more money to come into the industry and all aspects of the industry. And it was interesting that it also became a bit of discussion about education. So there's education for companies so they can work with small companies, education for entrepreneurs, education for investors, and then all the way down to K through 12 education, getting the entrepreneurs of the future to come in and trying to create ocean literacy and water literacy, because some of us are both ocean and water tech. So smart money and education were kind of woven together in some regards. Another interesting idea was, of course, the area of public policy, and the OECD was there, and they talked about some of the ways that they're trying to help foment an understanding at the countries around the world, the democracies of the world, of the importance of this field. And we remarked on the fact that although the oceans have always been important, it's only in 2016 they did their first report. And NOAA did its first ever report in 2016. And here's this incredible ocean where we know that some of the statistics, 90% of all the goods move through the ocean, 98% of habitable Earth is underwater, and yet why are we just doing these studies? So that was really interesting. We talked about Portugal as an example, because one of the people at the table had said that he'd done a study some years ago, and they had predicted at the time that Singapore would be a big winner just because they array funding and strategy and public policy so well. But Portugal, I think, is a particularly good example where they are, they started out by talking about they've started a whole accelerator network through the country. And one of the things that we have been promoting is that ports should be part of the blue economy, and often they think of themselves as landlords. In Portugal, they're going to all the ports, and they're state-owned, and so they're saying, you are part of the blue economy, and we're going to put our accelerators in the ports, and you've got to be part of it. So there's public policy coming together with execution. They also are starting a blue fund. They also are one of the few countries that has done a satellite account looking at their economics. So they've really pulled a lot together, and so I turned to the gentleman that had said, you know, we did this study, and I said, was Portugal on your list? And he said, no. So here's an example where public policy, I think, looking at the ocean, developing the ocean, has been extraordinarily effective. And then to finish, metrics of success, trying to understand what will be success. And we talked about when we look back 2 years from now or 3 years from now, what will it look like and how successful we've been by creating these contacts. And then the OECD was talking about this. A month ago I was here at an OECD event that RevOcean hosted, and it was really about ocean innovation networks. And we also talked about metrics, so we clusters, and I'm sure the accelerators as well need to look at the metrics and comparing between each other. And then finally, and this kind of came out of education, kind of came out of metrics, but we need to be thinking about the less developed countries. We can't create sustainability without everybody in the world being involved. And there was some back and forth, some comments about if you don't have the trained people in these countries, it's going to be hard to develop the networks. Good point. On the other hand, we can't leave them behind. And RevOcean gave an example that they are going to be working on waste management, are going to build a new facility in Ghana because there's so much plastics there, and turn it into fuel. And so that got some juices flowing. So public policy, less developed countries, you know, Inter-American Development Bank is looking at opportunities, Asian Development Bank. So a lot of interesting things, and again, it reinforced the fact that change is coming quickly at this point.
Which is what accelerators are all about, change. It's change. Two of the points that you made there, I want to bring to you, Angelica, because he mentioned education, and I recall that you said that one of the companies that has come in as a partner is 100 Mentors.
Yeah.
Is it 100 Mentors or Mentor 100?
100 Mentors.
It's an education startup.
Yeah.
So you've gone outside of the sector and found an education startup to come in and partner with you. Why?
Because actually they have already a built-in platform for mentoring, and they cooperate with big universities around the world like Stanford or UCL. And they do cooperate with Facebook and Google, and they fuel change. They just started. I mean, they started bringing change. So we fed them with mentors from the maritime industry that they were missing this part. They have from the ocean side, but not from the commercial side that many. And we will do something together on this.
And the other one that Michael mentioned there was governments, and you had government in your thing. How are you? Because the shipping industry in Greece is such a big part of the Greek economy. What is the Greek government doing to nurture a sustainable shipping environment? And I don't mean total story about the policy of the Greek government. What I mean is, how are they nurturing startups and a culture of innovation? Perhaps, actually, Roberto, perhaps you could delve into that one a bit as well.
They don't. No, they really don't, because it's if you have a startup in Greece, it's very, very difficult to get started. Only the bureaucracy is insane compared to other countries such as the UK that I'm familiar with. So I don't know if Angelica wants to take it from here to a more positive perspective.
Actually, the Maritime Ministry, let's say, doesn't do anything, but there's a new ministry for digitalization and digitation that tries to make things easier. But now we're just trying to change government, so I don't know what's going to happen and if things changed. I was approached by other governments, not by the Greek government.
Oh, so when you said government, you didn't mean the Greek government.
No.
You meant other governments. Okay. But in Israel, did you find is the structure in Israel more supportive?
Yeah, actually, there is what we call the PPP, public-private partnership. We are completely private for-profit organization. However, two of the portfolio companies that we invest in applied for grants from the Innovation Authority. This is a government office that oversees the entire innovative ecosystem. And once they see a valid IP, intellectual property, in such a company that got investment by the private sector, they put matching money from the government, from the taxpayer, to support the growth of this company. It's also more appealing for the investors to invest $1 if they know they get for each $1 $2 of investment, undiluted investment into the company to support in this company in the early stage. And actually there is hundreds of applications that got approved by the Israeli government to get a matching money from the taxpayer to promote innovation. This is one of the secrets maybe why there is so many startups blooming in Israel every year.
The environment there is
very supportive for startups, yes.
And many of them are from the army, right? Is that correct? I think they branched, it's spin-offs from the...
Yeah, you know, it's funny because in Israel, the army service is compulsory. So every startup has the roots of the founders from the army. So they say we came from the army. But actually, it's only another place to get more mature and to get more experience to get around outside your home. And maybe it's bringing people faster to maturity level of running their things by their own. There is some technology experts in the army, but most of the technology know-how is outside. It's because there is global corporates such as Intel, IBM, Google, and such with offices in Israel that are in the offices, and most of the entrepreneurs first work for Google and IBM and then spin off for startups.
Yeah. What about in the US? Because you're clearly from Silicon Valley with your background.
I'll finish the thought. I would say two thoughts. So one, our chief of staff and our finance manager both served in the IDF too, so it's a great source of talent as well. So we're based in New York City. So most of our team has worked out in Silicon Valley or in New York, which is known as Silicon Alley. I would say there's two thoughts. One, the shipping industry in the U.S. is not the most competitive, and there are legacy, historical reasons for this. It's a protected industry for defense reasons, and so
you got the Jones Act. You got the Jones Act for starters.
Exactly, and so it's not the most vibrant from a innovation standpoint in shipping. And that's why our client base is abroad. That's why our client base is in Athens and Copenhagen, Singapore, and Hong Kong, because we really had to branch out to go find the companies that were most forward-thinking on performance and most forward-thinking on innovation in the industry. From an accelerator perspective, our history is that we started in an accelerator of sorts, where basically the exchange was free real estate for staying in the building. And it's owned by a New York real estate family. And we've grown in that building, and now we rent real estate from them. That's really their model, and that's been an accelerator model that worked for us. I think the ancillary things that accelerators can offer to add value, my advice for anyone starting one or running one would be really focus on value delivery to your startups, because that's where the relationships will come from and derive, and what successful startups will drive from. In the States, in Silicon Valley, Y Combinator is probably the most well-known. And you essentially trade 7% of your company for the ability to have the Y Combinator stamp on your company. And it's been successful because they've produced good companies. Those companies have produced good access to venture capitalists. And it's kind of that virtuous circle that we've described. That's a very targeted value prop that means a lot. And it's a trade-off that entrepreneur has to make between ownership and participating in an accelerator. So it's a lot of skin in the game, but it's a big return when you get back. I think if the participation accelerator is less direct, less committed, then the value returned is probably also going to be less committed and less large.
Do you find that's true in the Maritime Alliance? Because you're West Coast, but you're more ocean solutions focused, not shipping focused per se. And I know when you and I have spoken about things before, there's been a touch on sort of like naval solutions, as well as the blue solutions, the ocean solutions. When you said it's not very there's not a competitive edge within the US shipping industry, obviously you're not focused just on the shipping industry, or your members aren't just focused on the shipping industry, but I've just wanted you to just say whether you agree with that competitiveness comment that Matt had.
Well, I would absolutely agree with that. We have some of the last major shipbuilding on the West Coast is in California and San Diego specifically, but it's primarily focused on the U.S. Navy and the Jones Act, et cetera. Between those two, they're not very competitive. So we don't have any members that are in the shipping field. But we have technology companies that are selling into the shipping field. And those companies, we deal together. Frankly, we don't have the same impediments. Even when we've talked to U.S. Commercial Service, the people that go out and try and break down trade barriers, we keep saying, no, if we have a good technology, and then we can go sell it around the world. And we have a list of our companies that have found partners around the world. So in the United States, if you look at maritime, I think about 50% of the investment probably in California. And recently the thing they did in Athens, what was the prize? The X Prize. The X Prize was won by a California organization, and then the $1 million prize from NOAA was run by high school kids from San Jose, California. So California is frankly a very competitive place, far more in the south than in the north in terms of maritime. We've had people go through Silicon Valley and say they don't want to talk about maritime. So there are few and far between. Liquid robotics, there's been a few that have gotten traction, but I would say there's a lot more disruptive technology further south, and that we're dealing around the world.
And we hope to be a part of that dialogue that helps to drive that change, right? There's no reason, when we went out and you asked about the Series A and Microsoft's involvement, a lot of venture capitalists were not familiar with maritime, were skeptical about shipping, there's not a lot of data on it, it's not a very transparent industry, and so they haven't even diligenced a lot of startups in the space in order to place their bets on which ones will be successful. And so I think it's successes like ours, as DeepSea comes around, as these companies come to market, raise capital, and are validated externally, it's going to bring more venture capital attention. I think in the US, that's going to be the big driver of entrepreneurship into the space. It will never be that the US domestically is the best market for your products, because it just inherently won't be in the foreseeable future. But it can be a great place to develop those products, bring them to market, and then sell them externally.
I'd like to, if I could add to answer that. And outside of shipping, most of our companies are selling about 50% in the United States, about 50% internationally. If they're a service company, they're obviously far higher percentage locally, but our manufacturers sell all around the world, but they also sell a lot in the United States. We're still the world's leading user, not least of which is the U.S. Navy. But just the amount of ocean technology gets bought is prodigious in the United States.
Before I close, because we've got a couple of minutes, anybody else got any comments or questions here for this final panel?
Is it happy hour yet? Is that what
it is? Happy hour now.
Look on people's faces.
If I ask you, have you got any questions you want to ask in the pub? Angelica, thank you very much, and thank you to our panel today, our final panel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.